I've always had friends that got into some of those bands. I wasn't necessarily in those bands, although I like that genre of music, right? But the show going forward, I'm gonna have Jim on a few times because he's got some good stories, man. But the shows going forward is I'm gonna just interview my friends, and even if they are not in bands, that whether they're a musician or not a musician, whether they've seen a lot of shows or they haven't seen a lot of shows. It's just that I know, especially in our formidable years, we our personalities are shaped by music. Especially those of us who were teenagers in the 20th century, right? And so I know as we get older too, it's hard to go back to that childhood wonder, right? Or that where everything is brand new, everything is fresh, or whatever. But I'm just another dork, with a laptop here having fun with my friends, and I hope you enjoy the show. I'm also a music producer who produces music on a laptop, like a dork, you know. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to share a screen with this right here. So this is going to be, I'm going to release this, I think, a week from today, either today or Saturday. And I'm going to have a listening party like I did last year. And every song of this project connects. It's like one huge freaking concept album, except it's from like 7 to 9 different character perspectives, right? And this one's called Discarded Time Path Obsolete Report. It's not available right now, but it will be in a week from now, right? And you can click on the songs themselves, and in here there'll be added links for people who are interested in that. I really look up to Brian Funk and his Ableton devices, so I like shouting him out and put his links in there whenever I use an instrument, and also, so here you go. This one's about Ripley Cates, right? Blah blah blah. He's this and that, and we last left him at this song, right? And then you could click on that link, and because the order of the songs on the albums are not linear, but you could click on these links and you could go to the next song in their story. Because I'm freaking crazy. That's why I'm doing this here. I have more releases here, but what I'm truly excited about is like, you go back to the beginning here, and a lot of these songs here I'm going to redo because back in the day, when I started, I've been doing this for years, you guys. I sucked on a lot of this stuff, and now I think I know how to do this. So I'm going to go back to the beginning, introducing these characters, right? And I'm going to redo them, have someone help me mix and master, and then release them as streams. And I'm going to be babbling about each song in the character's progress. So I'm really excited about this, man. It's years in the making. And yeah, that's all I want to say about that right now. So I'm going to click out of this, and I want to thank you for putting up with me. And here we have Jim.
Howdy, everybody. How you guys doing today?
Should we say hi to the chat really quick?
Oh, yeah.
What up, brother Tat? Thanks for being here, man. Really
and I'm glad you're liking the Space Monkey buzz cut.
Yeah, dude. Summertime, right? You got sometimes you got to cut that.
Well, I hated the hair. Like I said, I had it for the wife because she loved the curls, but I am done with it.
Yeah. What's up, Matthew? Jim's one of my main men here. Matthew is too, man. So is Kirby under the cowl of MS. Yeah, dude. I'm here to, like I said, I'm going to interview my friends, whether they're people on Facebook who I've been friends with for years and I never talked to, and they want to talk about their personal music story, right? It doesn't even have to be like who you know or who you met or if you're in a band or blah, blah, blah. It's just about music, and 20th century music. And I have to kind of know you. And I know a lot of people on Facebook too. Hey, Roger, what's up, dude? Even people in my past Hey, Roger, I love you, man. I love Roger.
Thank
Metarog.
you, Raj. Thank you.
Metarog. Right? Even people in my past, like, my best friend back in the day. I had a few best friends, like Max Reinhardt. He got me into so many great bands. I'd like to interview him someday. My friend David Lepak, who is, we're talking childhood songwriting guy who influenced me, and Sheila Sweeney influenced me, and my cousin Troy Doobie. I'll interview anybody of my friends, and we'll just talk. I want to bring it into a linear perspective, right? Which I'm a hypocrite because it's hard for my brain to do that, to think linearly, go back all the way, and, from the beginning and start talking about things. But I'm going to do that with Jim here. What up, Kenneth Bird? Thanks for being here, my man. Okay, dude.
Hoo-yah!
Yeah. Yeah, Jim is a soldier, that's for sure, man.
Dude, they would reject me like a forget it.
So should I do this, you guys? Should I put us back here?
That's
or do you
fine.
or you want us up front like that? I don't know.
I'm cool with whatever.
I'll let the chat decide,
Yep.
All right, Jim, thank you so much for being here, man. When you were young, you got exposed to a lot of great, historic, influential music from the LA scene.
That
And I want to ask you, but I want you to go maybe slightly before that and just ask you, okay, Jim, what was your life like, and what did music mean to you at the time when you were younger?
Oh, that's easy. When I was a young warthog, I was born in San Francisco, never knew my father. And I don't know how or why, but we left San Francisco, lived with my mom's aunt, who, they're Italian Catholics, very strict. My mom was poor. We were on welfare. I didn't know any of this stuff. My aunt, her son, who was my uncle, Uncle Donald, growing up, he was in a lot of movies in the 40s, as a kid star. They used that money to buy a lot of properties. Okay. So we lived with them, didn't have to pay rent. I went to public schools and all that stuff. When I was young, I was an only child, basically. I was spoiled. It wasn't until I got much older I realized I had half brothers and sisters because my father was a man whore. And the music that people listen to in my family, like my cousin Jeff and Danny, was your typical 70s rock, Led Zeppelin, AC/DC, Rush, and stuff like that. When I turned 12, which was in May of 1979, heard about some band called the Sex Pistols in punk, and I had no clue what they were, but I thought I'd go check them out.
When you were how old?
12.
You were 12. Okay.
1979. That's when they made their first U.S. tour.
Okay,
and
awesome.
You could go to a concert for a big band like that for like $10. And that's with all the ticket fees and crap. $10, right? So I saved up my allowance for it. I bought my ticket. I went, and it freaking changed my life. Because they were up here singing about, if you listen to the words of like Anarchy in the UK or God Save the Queen, they were talking about all the horrible crap going on in England and all this, even though Malcolm McLaren formed them just to sell his crappy clothesline.
Yeah.
There was something in the music, the energy, the anger, and it was a whole new world. And that was my first exposure to it. I never pursued anything other than that after that. Then a couple of my friends went out to Florentine Gardens. I was a troubled child. I had anger issues. even though I wasn't punk, I was punk at the time, if that makes sense. You had the punk attitude.
Yeah.
For example, I was in I think it was my third period history class and this is when they bust, right? So I was getting bused from Los Angeles to Woodland Hills, if you know San Fernando Valley, to go to junior high. And we were taking finals, right? It was a final in history, and it counted for like, I think 60-70% of my grade. And so I took my final, I brought it up, and I said, I need to go to the bathroom. And because I really had to go. And he's like, no, I said the rules at the beginning of the class. Nobody leaves until everybody's done. And we kept going back and forth like this. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. I really need to go. You can go with me. I'm not putting answers in the bathroom or anything like that. I need
He just didn't want you cheating, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I need to fucking take a leak. And he said, you walk out that door, I'm going to fail you. And I'm the kind of stupid motherfucker like, oh, you're going to push me? You're going to fail me? Even though I know I aced this test? Well, if I'm going to get an F, I'm going to get an F.
Saying
for
F
a
you.
good reason. No, for a good reason.
If I get an F, it's going to be
so
F
I pissed on his desk. I literally pissed on his desk in front of the whole class. The girls freaked out. The guys laughed. My parents,
That's some anger.
My mom and my aunt had to come all the way up to Woodland Hills. I had to go to a psychologist. And I'm like,
12.
No, that was junior high, 9th grade. So what was I? 14 then?
Okay, you were 14. Okay.
Yeah, because 7th grade is you're 12. Yeah, when
you're 14, you think you know everything. It's a fact.
Yeah, but not only that, I mean, it's just, dude, don't tempt me. Don't sit here and say you're going to fail me, because I'm like, fuck you. If you're going to fail me, I'm going to give you a good reason.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I couldn't think of a better reason than that. It was either piss myself or piss on his desk. So needless to say, I couldn't go to that junior high anymore. I went through 4 different junior highs before I finally finished the 9th grade.
Yeah.
And when the last one came, that's when I discovered I really got into the punk scene at the end. My last year in junior high was 9th grade. So yeah, 14, 15. And I was going to clubs and shows by myself. And it was a trip because it was different.
So what bands were you seeing at this time? This is 1980 or 1979, 80, 81, something like that?
Okay, 1979. So if I was 14, it's like 1981, 1982.
Right. Okay.
It was pre-Henry Rollins, Black Flag. X was starting out, Germs, all that kind of stuff, you know. TSOL.
Circle Jerks, stuff like that.
Oh, yeah, Circle Jerks. And I got a good story about them, but I got to get to that. And I almost, now the school I went to finish junior high was Westwood Junior High School. If you know anything about Westwood, here's Beverly Hills, here's Westwood where UCLA is, and then there's Brentwood. So we're talking big money, ritzy people, beautiful public school. Everybody in there was preppy. Yeah. And I'm this dude, my first day of school there, I went in with 21 hole docks, bondage pants with all the straps, a mohawk dyed blue.
Dang, dude.
And Circle Jerks t-shirt that said Group Sex on it.
Yep,
and
that was their album, right?
Yeah, that was the first album.
Yeah.
And I was walking around with this chick named Sadie because she was kind of punk, you know, and we were talking and shit. And dude, the entire school was following us, pitching pennies, all kinds of stuff, like trying to provoke me, you know. And I'm looking around and I'm like, are they treating me like I'm a sideshow freak? I'll give them something to consider me a freak about.
Yeah.
And she's like, no, just ignore him, just ignore him, just ignore him. So, okay, I'm cool with that. And I'll never forget the counselor there. For some reason, he was really concerned about my well-being. Because, see, what was going to happen if I didn't graduate from here and go to high school, I would have been sent to youth authority, YA, till I was 21.
Wow.
So I had to play the straight and narrow, which was really hard for me to do.
Yeah. Dude. After, yeah.
So, yeah, I had.
So you were punk and you didn't really have friends that were.
No.
You were yourself.
Yes. It wasn't until I dated Kelly, and I'll get to that too. And I started hanging out with her. Her best friend had an older brother who was punk, and we started hanging out and started going to gigs with him. That's how I met the Circle Jerks, and I was beer bonging with Greg and the other guy in the back of their pickup after a gig. But anyway, 16-year-olds should not drink. Okay,
No.
I'll say that. 16-year-olds should not beer bong. It's just, oh God. Anyway, I enjoyed art class. Okay. And art, because, you know, I grew up on comic books. So art was kind of like my way to get out frustrations and all kinds of cool stuff. And there was this chick I had a crush on, and we were doing, you know, life portraits. They put some tables together. She was in the center, and all the tables were around her in the center.
Right.
And
you what were you working with? Charcoal?
Yeah. And so I was just doing it, and I'm like, oh, this is heaven for me. You know, I'm 14 turning 15. Yeah, I was turning 15.
Young,
and
dumb,
here's the chick I
what.
like, you know, in the early 80s, dressed all 80s out, and I get to draw her. I'm cool with that.
Yeah.
And we're 20 minutes in, and the teacher says, okay, you're done doing the female form. Now it's time to do the male form. I'm like, no, I'm not doing the female form. I literally said that in the class, and everybody just kind of looked. And they're like, well, it doesn't matter if you're done. I'm going to grade what you have, and you're going to draw the male form. And I'm like, okay, fine. Who do you pick to be the male form? He said, well, you're going to draw me. And we're talking about a pot-bellied, bald art teacher with glasses. I'm like, and I said this in class, dude, I don't want to fucking draw you. Just like that. Everybody started busting out laughing. And so we're going back and forth because he's looking at it as me trying to undermine his authority. And I'm just being honest. It's like, no, dude, I don't want to fucking draw you. I want to finish drawing her.
Yeah, I'm not done. I'm not done doing the other thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And she blushed. And finally, he tried to really push the authority, man.
Yeah.
And he's like, if you do not do what I say right now, I'm failing you. And you know what happens if I fail you.
And you've heard that one before.
And I'm like, that's it. I changed. And people in the class said it. There's something in my face that said it. And I looked at him. I'm like, you're going to fucking fail me, you dickwad? I'm going to give you something to fucking fail me for. I got up, picked up the fucking cheesy wooden chair they had for us, and threw it at his ass.
Wow.
And the vice principal and a security guard came in, carried me to the counselor. They were ready to send me off right then. And the counselor, I'll never forget him. His name was Al. I don't remember his last name. And it was pretty obvious he was gay. That didn't bother me.
Right.
But, you know, back
but
then.
you had anger management issues pretty much.
Yeah. And it was back then that, you know, the scene for the gay people, it was underground. It wasn't open like it is now, where you can be yourself.
Right.
But he's like, Jim, why do you keep doing this? Don't you know what's going to happen? You're going to ruin your life. Blah, 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 blah. Come talk to me. And I'm like, dude, I'm not going to talk to you, man. You don't dig it. Because I knew what happened. If I talked about my situation, what I'm going through, I'd get taken away from my family. get in foster care, and foster care is no better than where I was. So
Yeah.
screw that. And so the gigs were an
This was
outlet.
like this was around like 81, 82, and
Yeah.
you were just filled with anger pretty much when you simply express yourself, right, and your honesty, and then someone shoots it down. That just freaking irked you. That set you over the edge, and you
Yeah.
raged. And the music that you were listening to, you said the first band that you saw was Sex Pistols at 12.
Yeah.
Right. And you saw that on your own. And how did you stumble into that?
Because I saw someone handed me a flyer,
Right.
for the gig. I think they were playing. It was somewhere in Los Angeles. I can't remember. It's so long ago. I mean, that's 1979. You could look it up when they played in LA. I can't remember where it was. I just know it wasn't Hollywood. I know it wasn't like at the Palladium. It wasn't at the Hollywood Bowl.
And so from there, you just got handed a flyer and it said Sex Pistols, and you're like, "What?" Right?
Yeah.
You never heard of them?
The tickets? What day? No, I didn't know anything about it.
And so you just grabbed the flyer, and then you went and bought a ticket and showed up.
Yeah.
And then
but I didn't get to actually talk to any performers or anything.
No, but I mean, you were 12 years old.
Yeah.
And you walked into a Sex Pistols show at the height of their energy.
Yeah. And I find people feeling the same way I do, angry and frustrated with their situation and the way things are. And they weren't doing anything to change it. And it may have been all manufactured, at least with the Sex Pistols it was.
Yeah.
But then through them, I was able to discover other bands like Black Flag that always talked about what was going on, and always talked about all the other stuff, very political. And I considered, people think punk was anger and hate in the beginning, and it wasn't. It was very...
Well, I remember as a kid, just, I was more into heavy metal, and I kind of listened to the Dead Kennedys and stuff like that, but I just never really jumped in. So I admire kids who did that,
Well, see, if you listen to that stuff, like the Dead Kennedys and Bad Religion, that was message music behind the angry guitars and drums. It was all...
So Sleepy Reader has a question for you. If you know this, because you were just a 12-year-old kid, but is that the gig where the Sex Pistols broke up?
In 79? No, it was their first tour. Did they break up on their first tour? I don't think so. No, they broke up after the second album, because that's...
So that opened your mind, the Sex Pistols experience. You later, what was your next show after that? But you were also you were a troubled kid. Just, when you didn't like someone reprimanding you for something when you were being honest about something. That was your MO. And you also started, now when you started dressing in a mohawk and you were original punk rocker, right? And the kids didn't understand you, and the kids hated you for that, or made fun of you for that, right?
Yeah. And a lot of
what compelled you to do that? What compelled you to do that? Was that Sex Pistols show, or was it much later?
No, because I started seeing how people were in the scene, going to gigs. I was just a normal, goofy guy who had blonde, curly hair going to these gigs. I didn't wear glasses back then.
Yeah.
And I saw X when Billy Zoom was still their guitarist.
Cool.
And I loved Billy Zoom.
What a great band, though, with having those two vocalists there. And
when I met Exene Cervanka, she was with Lydia Lunch. She was always palling around with Lydia Lunch. And Lydia Lunch is the big, outspoken, in your face.
Yeah.
And
the war never ends with her.
Right? Yeah. And what I came to found out is she had absolutely no talent. She was like a Kardashian. No, seriously. Yeah. Absolutely no talent.
I'm laughing though.
Just famous for being there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So you it's kind of a blur maybe for you, but after that, like, Sex Pistols show, what was the next show that you went
Oh
to?
my God. I went
It's
to
okay.
I went to a lot of little shows
But
that
that
were,
just opened your brain. You're like, I want to go to more shows, right?
yeah,
When you were 12, right?
yeah. And between the ages of 13 and 14, I was going to gigs in places like Venice Beach, Santa Monica, um, Hollywood. No, you went to Hollywood to see a lot of the bigger names, actually.
Yeah.
But they played all over. Sometimes they play in the Crenshaw district, and they'd be in. Well, thank you, Jeff. I'm lucky that I do remember what I do, considering all the drugs I did. I mean, and drugs flowed freely in these scenes because a lot. I wasn't the only person who was a troubled youth. There were a lot of disaffected, disenfranchised, troubled youth,
Yeah.
and we would drink and whatever, and just our fuck parents, fuck society, fuck this, fuck that. And yeah, I had anger issues. You're absolutely right.
Right.
Under the cow. Okay. And I don't know why I hated. There was no reason I had it. No, but see, things like that could be civil disobedience, against authority. Respect is earned. Okay. And in order for me to respect a teacher, that teacher has to respect me. And if they have no respect for me, why should I respect them?
Yeah.
I
Absolutely.
literally had to go to the bathroom, and I explained that to him. And I mean, I'm honest. I'm always upfront.
Yeah.
When I said I was a junkie for 20 plus years, I can show you the track marks. Okay.
Yeah.
The scars are still there.
Right. But it's okay. So that's an admirable trait, especially when you're young, to do that. And so there was drugs flowing in the scene. So from Sex Pistols, you wanted to just, okay, I want to experience that more. I want to see more shows like that.
And
so do you remember your earlier shows after Sex Pistols?
I found, like I was saying, at places like in warehouses, they ran out a warehouse, and anywhere from 4 to 8 bands would play, and you paid a $10 cover charge.
Yeah.
And you'd see all these bands, and that's how I saw 45 Graves, TSOL, More Black Flag, Suicidal Tendencies before they got really big with that song, and a bunch of others that I can't remember. I know.
So you were going to these shows because you wanted to go to shows, and you didn't necessarily know who they were. You were experiencing them for the first time live before an album.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then
none of these guys got signed for albums yet.
Yeah.
And
would you buy their merch, or did you have the money to buy their
No,
albums?
I was lucky. I had the money to buy my Circle Jerk shirt and my bondage pants.
Right.
And my boots.
Yeah.
So I went to a lot of those kind of gigs, and then someone, we were all, and this, everything in the beginning was about the music, and in the beginning there really was no hate against new wave stuff, because a lot of the people who did the punk scene and wrote magazines about the punk scene also did new wave experimental avant-garde music.
Yeah.
No, I never. The Runaways started in like 77, 78. I never got to see them. I would have loved to have seen Joan Jett and Lita Ford young and hot. That would have been awesome. But no, I never got to see them. It was mainly the local LA bands. Okay. And the thing is, everything was about hookup culture in the punk scene too, because it was an act of rebellion too. Oh, kids aren't supposed to have sex, so let's have as much sex as possible.
Right. Yeah.
But I didn't want that. I was like, I want to meet an actual girl and, sit there and have an actual girlfriend, not just fuck.
Yeah.
I'll answer your question in a minute.
Yeah.
Uh,
Thank you, Matthew, for the questions, man. It's so awesome. We're gonna try getting through some of his story first, and then
yeah.
we'll go to questions. But yeah, I really appreciate you being here, Matthew.
And at that time, a lot of clubs started opening up and having teen nights. You know, you had to be under 18 to get in, and it was cheap to get in, like maybe $5, and they give you free soda. Refresh my memory, Darby Crash. I don't. What band? Or that was that the guy from the Germs? Because if it was, he was a junkie. I shot up with him, dude. I mean,
Yeah.
that's all I remember.
So you went from Sex Pistols to the scene, and it was kind of a blur, but you were seeing awesome freaking bands, and you were doing the circle dancing, and I don't know if they called it moshing. Did they
Back
call
then, it was called skanking. Yeah.
it wasn't slam dancing, it was skanking.
Slam dancing, skanking, and then moshing didn't come till stuff like Slayer and all
Yeah.
that, man.
Okay.
That's when they started calling it moshing.
And there was a hookup culture, and you were meeting people, and you were partying, but you also you didn't want to go too crazy with just the hookup culture.
Yeah, especially because then AIDS was big, and everybody thought, well, fuck it, we're gonna die anyway. Very nihilistic. But I wanted to actually meet someone that I could have something more substantial with, which is weird at 16. And a couple of my friends were like, well, hey, we can check out a couple of clubs,
Right.
actual dance clubs. One of them was the Odyssey, which Wednesday nights they had a teen night. And the reason they did that was very nefarious. There's a whole documentary about the Odyssey nightclub off of Wilshire and La Cienega here on YouTube. I suggest you guys watch it.
Okay.
And it got shut down for its nefarious purposes. But none of us knew that at the time.
Right.
And the other one was the Florentine Gardens, which was off of Hollywood between Vine and some other street. But I remember the Florentine Gardens, and we'd go there Friday night.
Right.
And most of the time we didn't meet anybody,
Yeah.
And we just hung out, hanging up against the wall, smoking cigarettes, because you could smoke in clubs, you could smoke in bars then.
You could smoke in high school back in the day.
Yeah, smoking in the boys' room. Yeah. But one night, nobody wanted to go out with me. They were going to go to a gig, right?
Right.
But me being, I was 16 by this time. And I dropped the mohawks. I was just pretty much like kind of buzz cut like I am, except it was dyed like blonde, like platinum, like almost white blonde.
Okay.
And if you imagine me with no glasses, my eyes are really blue.
Yeah.
And I'm pale, and then that's platinum blonde. I look like this crazy albino punker,
Right. Yeah.
Because I still wore my docs, but I started working at 16, and I was working doing ad specs part-time telemarketing, and because there's tons of phone rooms in Hollywood, man, they all paid minimum wage plus commission. You work 4 hours. And back then, minimum wage was $4.25 an hour. So you wanted that commission and selling ad specs is advertising specialties, pens with the company name on it, keychain, stuff like that.
Right.
And you made money off of selling that stuff. So going to school during the day, get off school, hop on several buses to get back up to Hollywood, work for 4 hours, get home by 8. Do it all over again. So you look forward to those Wednesdays and Friday nights, because I was trying to be independent because my mom didn't have money.
Right.
And I could afford what I want. So I bought myself a pair of black and white creepers.
Yeah.
Okay. You guys know y'all in the audience know what creepers are? Yeah. Darby Crash. I do know him from the Germs. Yes. I didn't know his name, but I knew who he was because I shot up with him. I got stories about other people I shot up with too. But okay. Anyway, I go to this club, the Florentine Gardens. It's Friday night. I was by myself because no one wanted to go. They didn't have any luck. the other 2 or 3 times we went. And it was K-Rock night this night. And we were back then Richard Blade was big. He was an Aussie who played all the 80s music. He was in love with the chick from Berlin, and he would play all that stuff. Yeah.
Cool.
And they were playing with some of the danceable stuff from The Cure, Echo and the Bunnymen.
This is early stuff too. It's around 82, 83, right?
Yeah. So it was like Killing an Arab, Boys Don't Cry, stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that.
And here I am. I'm skanking. Okay, because it's a big ballroom-like place, right?
Yeah.
And couples are dancing, whatnot. But I'm just by myself. So I'm just literally skanking by myself around the entire fucking place.
Yeah.
And there was a stage where there were tables and chairs and people sit there. And I guess I caught the eye of Kelly up there. Kelly was my first girlfriend in the scene. And actually my only girlfriend in the scene. We were together for about 1.5 years. And even after we broke up, we were still good friends. And she never dated anyone. And I thought that was very cool because it would have killed me, you know?
Yeah.
But anyway.
Well, yeah. And that's because that's what you were. Yeah. That you were a young man who actually wanted to date and have some true companionship and love.
Yeah. And I'll never forget what she was wearing. As I'm skanking around, I see this chick get right in front of me in my path. And I stop and I kind of look at her like this. And she just said, hi. And she's wearing like a kind of black and white, big checker type A-line dress, like a 60s mod dress, black tights, white go-go boots.
Yeah.
She had a blonde hair, kind of like a bob A-line cut, and she had blue eyes. And she said, hi, I'm Kelly. I'm like, hi, I'm Jim. You know, duh.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And we just started talking, hanging out, and we ended up being an item. And
Cool.
She was into the punk scene, but more into the mod and ska scene.
Yeah.
And I still like punk, but I was starting to get into that, listening to Special, Selector, The Beat, and other stuff.
Yep.
And so when I went out to club nights, I was going out with her.
Right.
And I started dressing like a rude boy, okay? So I had my two-tone suit with my creepers, and I still had my platinum blonde short hair like this. And we're at the Odyssey on a Wednesday night, and we're out on the patio being the cool kids smoking cloves, because that's what we smoked back then, was cloves.
How ridiculous. I hate those things, man.
Yeah. Oh, God, they killed you. They put you know.
I know. I remember cloves now. I remember that, yeah.
And in comes Rodney.
Wow.
Bingenheimer.
Wow.
And old as fuck, wrinkly, but he still got the Beatle mod going on.
Yeah.
And on his arm was this chick, literally looked like Marilyn Monroe.
Wow.
And my jaw dropped. Because I always loved Marilyn. I grew up on Marilyn movies. I'm Like It Hot, 7 Year Itch, and you know.
Yeah. Yep.
And the chick from who's another one I really dug a lot? The chick that was in Breakfast at Tiffany's, famous actress. I can't think of her name. Anyway, and Kelly's all, do you know who that is?
So she already knew him?
Yeah. Well, she knew of him. She's like, that's Rodney Bingenheimer. I'm like, who?
Now, you guys, Rodney Bingenheimer, for those who don't know, I didn't really know because I'm not some know-it-all.
Biggest motherfucker, knew everybody. He was the unauthorized mayor of Hollywood. Literally.
Yeah, pretty much. Mayor of Sunset Strip there.
Yeah.
And he kind of was just
Audrey Hepburn. Thank you.
He worked it on the street. He was a natural person that people really liked. And he managed to get in with the Monkees. And he was he was on that show as a backup for the Monkees. And he just, all throughout the 60s, 70s, and 80s and 90s and into 2000s, he was just a really big player as far as discovering new bands. I was shocked that he actually helped discover David Bowie. I mean, David
Yeah.
Bowie had an album, I think, at that time yet, but he would bring in people from England and make them popular, and then he later became a DJ. So this guy, yeah, it's really interesting that you met him.
Go ahead.
Are you there?
Yeah, he was. Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Cool. Yeah, no, it's cool.
Okay. Yeah, and this is how I met him. And you know, I'm dressed like a sharp, a two-tone, a rude boy, and Kelly's wearing one of her little A-line dresses, but she's got sensible shoes on, and she's wearing her parka. And he kind of looked at her, even with that girl on his arm.
And he froze up, buddy. That was funny. You actually froze up there. That was funny.
Oh. Okay, but then he came back because he was working his way through the crowd, and he stopped and talked to us. And he's like, "Are you guys mods?" I'm like, "Oh, no, I'm no mod." And he's like, "What about you?" To her. She's just like, Kelly's just like, "I like everything."
Yeah. He froze up again.
"Oh, you guys like ska music?" Like, yeah, she got me into it. I froze again?
Yeah.
Man, I wanted to come out and smoke a cigarette.
Well, you did a little bit, right? You got some puffs in.
Yeah, let me bring the laptop back in. Okay. So he's like, "So you guys like ska music?" And she's like, "Oh, yeah." And I'm like, she got me into it. I'm digging on it, you know. So I actually learned to dance, but with Kelly, you know, because punkers don't dance.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Well, hey, we're going to leave here and go see a ska band called the Scatolites. You want to go?" And he was looking at her when she said it. You know?
He's not looking at you, right?
Yeah. And I'm like, "Dude, you're not taking my woman, okay?" Because, you know, me. If you look at me, I'm like all of 125 pounds wet, and I don't know.
You had anger management issues, yeah.
And he's already got a hottie on his arm, and he wants to take my hottie too.
Yeah.
And
hottie boom body.
And she was like, "Well, yeah, we want to go," and put her arm around me. And he looked at me and he looked at her. He's like, "All right, let's go." And so we hopped in his limo, and we ended up going to see a band free, and he went backstage. He took us with him. There was an entourage. There were people waiting for him there. Yeah. I didn't know who this guy was.
You didn't know who Rodney Bingenheimer was, and this guy, I guess, had that natural knack that people, even amongst his peers in the mid '60s, when he was doing this thing, they would just kind of like gravitate towards him because he was such a nice guy and he was very charismatic and yet quiet and odd. But seemingly
very
honest somehow,
very low speaking voice, but it carried.
Like an Andy Warhol kind of guy.
Yeah, and so we started going to clubs with him, and we started going like, dude, we got to see. We got to see the. I have a bottle of water that is losing condensation, and I was like, what? But anyway, we started going. That's how I saw the Go-Go's before they did their first album, was with Rodney, because he had to discover them and get them gigs at the Whiskey and what.
Go-Go's, well, that is so awesome.
And before the Bangles did their first 4-song EP, he
had all this energy and they were just coming through. And Rodney would find these bands, right?
Yeah. And then he's like, "Do you listen to my show?" I'm like, "What show?" He's like, "K-Rock. I'm on K-Rock Saturday nights from 10 to 2 in the morning." And I'm like, "Oh, cool." Because I didn't listen to radio then. You know, I went to the gigs and I hung out with my friends and we listened to what we listened to.
Yeah.
And it ended up where I learned so much about music from him. He exposed me to great British bands like XTC.
Yeah.
And people like Brian Eno. Even stuff I never heard of from the 60s. Like everybody knows Frank Zappa, right?
Right, yeah.
But many of you out there may not know Captain Beefheart. Captain Beefheart came before Zappa.
Yeah.
And was even more eccentric and weird.
Yeah.
Okay. and just all kinds of stuff. I mean, we got the British invasion
So,
of
did you get to meet some of these, celebs before they became celebrities? Pretty much.
the only one I got to meet through Rodney was Nina Hagen. You guys
Okay.
know who Nina Hagen is?
Anyone in the chat?
She did a song in the 80s called I Want a New Toy. She was a German chick. She was into the punk scene in Germany, came over here, and she got big here.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Nina Hagen, I Want a New Toy. That's the song. You can look it up.
So
And
yeah, so you were seeing Go-Go's when they were just coming out. And
yeah,
who else? The Bangles, right?
yeah,
And who
and
else?
God,
Just show after show, right?
yeah, there were a lot. There were too many, and
Too many.
then Kelly had a bunch of friends in the scene too. So one of her best friends, because they went to a Catholic private school that was way up in the hills of Hollywood.
Right.
And finally, she kept telling me, I need to get a scooter. I need to get a scooter, Yeah, see? Sleepy Reader knows Nina Hagen.
Yeah.
All right.
Someday Damien and I am we're gonna interview each other or something.
Yep.
I can't wait.
New toy. Oh,
Yeah, Damien was into all this at the same time you were, buddy.
yeah. And because for some reason, okay, Kelly, if you guys know anything about Los Angeles, she lived in the Larchmont district where Quentin Tarantino lives.
Okay.
Very rich people. And I'm the poor guy.
Yeah.
And she, and like a lot of her friends went to private schools like Loyola and all that kind of crap.
Right.
And they kind of made fun of me and stuff. And I didn't give a fuck. I mean,
Yeah.
But she's like, you really should get a scooter so we don't have to ride the bus. We can go to gigs and you can't party, but we can go meet Rodney and hang out and get to see all these gigs. So, I mean, fortuitous for her, but heartbreaking for me. My grandfather died at that time and left me a trust fund, and I happened to find
for the first time in your life, you had some money. Is that what you're talking about here? Wow.
Yep. And in the 80s, it was around 10 or 12 grand, which was quite a bit of money back then.
Yeah.
And I actually found a 1967 navy blue 150 super special Vespa, year of my birth, 1967, for $1,800.
Wow.
So I bought it. And I went to surprise Kelly, picked her up with it. And we went to see her friends. And they're like, oh, we never thought you'd get one because you're too poor. And that was, dude, no, that was it. I was done at that point. And I'm still dressed as a sharp, right? And I got off the fucking scooter. Kelly was on the back. And if you know how Vespa scooters were, they had like this big bar with two things that came down as the kickstand. And you put your foot down and bring the whole Vespa back. And I did that and I got off. And I'm like, dude, you need to stop talking shit about me. I'm sick of you. Just your money don't make you shit, motherfucker. Okay.
Yeah.
And we got into it right there on the front lawn in front of his house.
You and who?
This dude.
This guy who just slighted you.
Yeah, that knows Kelly, and a bunch of his Loyola friends were with him, and we'd been inside his house many times. I mean, they had actual medieval suits of armor in there, not the fake shit,
Right. Yeah.
Vaulted ceilings, and they've all lived in Tudor homes, so they're money.
Right.
And I didn't care about their money. I didn't care. I'm like, dude, you wear Fred Perry and think you're a mod. Dude, mods haven't existed since the 60s, and the rockers beat the fuck out of you guys. Just like I'm about to right now. The dude was an amateur boxer, broke my nose, fucked me up. But
I'm not laughing,
No, I saw my ass was getting kicked, so I had to fight fucking dirty.
Oh, yeah.
And I grabbed up some of the dirt and the grass and threw it in his face, kicked him in his nuts, got him on the ground, and just kept. I grabbed him by his hair and kept banging his head onto the concrete sidewalk and left his fucking ass there. And his
Wow.
friends are
So you
looking
played
at
dirty. Yeah.
and the friends are all looking at me like they were about to jump in. I'm like, what? You want some, fuckers?
Yeah.
You want some?
Yeah.
Because I changed. And that's why I've talked to you about this before.
Well,
Aaron.
you have that switch that will,
It's the shadow.
It's the anger coming from the shadow.
And and Kelly grabbed me and she drove the bike and got us out of there to her house.
Wow.
But we never had problem with her friends again. And she's like, I might get in trouble for this because my mom teaches them at Loyola.
Yeah.
But you earn respect,
Yeah. That's what it's about.
I have a limit. Yeah, exactly, Jeff. Yeah. We do. And
this is great. So we're going through your childhood memories here that are associated with all that time, that music time,
And we got some of the great stuff. I had more fun with Kelly at ska shows than I did going to the punk shows.
Do you remember your favorite ska bands? I had a girlfriend that loved ska music way back in the day.
Keep in mind, the local bands weren't big, but the British bands were, like the Beat, the Selector, the Specials. I really dug the Specials because they were about the unity for the two-tone movement.
Right.
But the Selector, if you guys ever listen to the Selector, they were very danceable. They had the beat down where the Selector
ska does have that,
Yeah, where the Selector was slow. Okay, not the Selector. I mean, the Specials were kind of slow with their music, especially the first album. But the Selector and the English Beat, they had the dance rhythm going. They had the dance hall stuff going down.
Yeah.
And so I really started enjoying that. So after a lot of the stuff that was happening in the punk scene, like all the riots breaking out every time, you just kind of get sick of that, especially when you're with someone who doesn't like that.
Right. Yeah.
And you start getting into what they're into, Yep. Stole it from disco. And so I really started listening to a lot of the ska. And then because of Rodney, I really started digging on Peter Murphy.
Yes.
Echo and the Bunnymen.
Oh yeah, all that stuff. Sure.
The Church. He turned me on to the Church.
Wow.
Two of their biggest songs are Reptile and Under the Milky Way. You can
I love that.
Well, I'm just talking for the audience.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And God, there were a couple of other, and they were considered alternative. And one of my guilty pleasures at that time. Okay, and the personage of the front man, I can't stand. But the lyrics he wrote and the music to accompany it was incredible. And that's the Smiths. Okay.
Yeah, no, I feel the same way almost. I kind of like him now, actually, though.
Well, I just can't stand Morrissey, but he wrote such great stuff in those.
He rubbed people, like Henry Rollins, and there's a lot of people that didn't like him, but what a great band! What a great songwriting band.
Johnny Mars, oh my God!
What a great guitarist! Yeah,
everything Mars was it.
Yeah,
and
I love that Big Mouth song too.
Yeah, Big Mouth Strikes Again. But another great one was
rising in the crescendos there.
Yeah, another good one that's similar to that was like Rough Home Ruffians or Rush Home Ruffians and Girl Afraid off the first album. Everybody knows them for How Soon Is Now. Which, it's a beautiful song, great riff. It's got all that teenage angst, which I went through, so I related to it.
And you were there, and you were like, okay, so Rodney was opening your brain, you and your girlfriend's brain on this stuff. Your girlfriend already kind of had an idea about this stuff, but you were really soaking it in.
Yeah.
What a change to go from the punk right? Well, you were still into punk though. You were
Yeah,
still
I still
going to
listen.
shows.
Yeah, and I would still listen to like new up and coming bands that were coming out. Um,
But you were big in Black Flag. I mean, you saw a lot of Black Flag shows.
yeah, I did not see it after the Santa Monica riot. Okay, that
Okay.
big gig. Once they got on, and that's when Rollins, Henry Rollins was with them. And
Right.
as soon as they took the stage, before they finished the third song in the set, the riot broke out. Santa Monica Riot Police came. Everybody was scattering into the Santa Monica Mall and the McDonald's there, or trying to run into the pier, Santa Monica Pier, to the arcade to get away,
Yeah.
because they literally were tear gassing motherfuckers in there.
Yeah.
It was,
Amazing. And after that, they were breaking up punk shows. That was it.
yeah, it
I
was
remember,
done.
yeah, I remember, learning about that with Circle Jerks and all
Yeah.
those bands. They were just getting broken up. The fire marshal would just show up, and then the cops would show up, and they weren't even doing anything but having a show. But after that riot, it changed everything, right?
Yeah. And a funny story. Rodney got me to meet a lot of bands. Like, I don't know if you ever heard of these bands. One was called Salvation Army. One was called Red Cross.
Yeah, I've heard of Red Cross.
Okay. And God, I can't even remember. There, one of them, there was a third one that I auditioned to play bass for.
Oh yeah.
They didn't like me playing, but they liked my look. So they said they were going to test me out at a gig they had coming up at.
What band was this?
I'm trying to remember the name. It's on, the song is on here on YouTube. Look up the song Street Life. And I can't remember who did the song or who the band is. So I wasn't official with them. And we played a live gig at this little dive that was on Normandy and Melrose, which is the other side of the Melrose Strip. Everybody knew the nice, swanky side of the Melrose Strip that all the stuff happened on.
That's not Haven, is it?
No.
They look kind of, they didn't look the.
No, let me get on the YouTubes and I'll tell you.
Red Scare? Is it Red Scare?
Yes, Red Scare. Thank you. Yeah, and it was the song that got on Rodney Bingham's The Best of New Punk, Volume 3. That song was done. And I auditioned for them. I couldn't play for shit. I was as bad as Sid Vicious on the bass.
Well, it's a similar story, or that just the look they decided to put you on.
Yeah, but we went to this live gig, and they were worried because it was a 21 and over punk bar. Okay, I'm like 17. Okay.
Yeah.
I should not have been anywhere near this place.
Right.
Nope, not the Crusaders.
No,
Red Scare.
Red Scare.
Yeah, it's Red Scare. And this was my first time playing. I'm setting up the bass. I didn't know how to tune it. They had people to do all that. And they're just like, oh, you fucking dweeb. You can't do all the things. Fuck. And we start playing. When everybody's set up and ready, and the crowd's getting rowdy. They've had several drinks in them.
Oh, okay.
And I didn't like where this was going. And
the whole vibe was just crazy, right?
Yeah, and there was a girl in the band, and she started singing for the Street Life song. The song about the homeless kids in Hollywood that lived under the 101 bridge. And all of a sudden an empty beer bottle hit her in the head. Like, whoa. Boom, she comes flying back. I drop the bass, I grab her, and I'm looking at everyone else, and they didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden people are rushing the fucking stage.
And see if she's all right?
No. The light broke out down in what we call now the mosh pit, and it was filling up onto the stage.
Wow.
And they were going after us. And all I knew is we had to get her out of here because she's fucking bleeding from her head. Yeah. I'm 17. I'm fucking freaking out. So I grabbed, and I'm still, okay, keep this in mind, guys. The height and weight I am now, I was at 12. I was 125 pounds and I was 5'9". Okay. All my life. So at 17, still built like this skinny kid with chicken fucking legs. I swear to God, I grabbed that guitar by the motherfucking neck like it was Conan's axe. And I said, "By Crom." And I started swinging it to keep fuckers back.
Yeah.
I actually hit someone. They turned like this. Hit him in the back so hard, he fell back. The damn thing broke at the neck where it connects to the rest of the guitar. I'm like, fuck this, let's get her out of here. And we got out the back, and I never saw them again. I had nothing to do with them.
That was the end of your little stint with Red Scare.
Yeah. And I never wanted to be part of the punk scene again, because I just realized at that point that it started changing. I mean, yeah, there was a lot of anger, but now it was becoming evil. And if you guys have watched the decline of Western civilization, it did happen because a lot of the gangs got involved.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like people, there were gangs.
Nazi kids were actually coming out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh God, the neo-Nazis everywhere. Why do you think Dead Kennedys said Nazi punks must die? Everybody hated them.
Yeah.
And
they were showing who they were.
Yeah, most people, the punks. In fact, Rodney almost got me and Kelly in that movie that Roger Corman did about the punk scene that was grossly inaccurate called Suburbia.
Kind of glamorized it, right?
Huh?
Glamorized it. The punk
kind of, but they were living in this abandoned tract housing. They were all homeless, and they'd beg and to eat and all that, and they all had disaffected lives like I did. But it was so funny. They looked at me and Kelly when we went for the audition, and it didn't pay shit. It did not pay shit, but what it was Scale at the time, and Scale, if you don't know the music or movie industry, Scale wages is like basically minimum wage, what an extra makes, right?
Right.
But we thought, oh, cool, we'll be in a movie about punks, and we're in the punk scene, so we're a natural fit. They told us we didn't look punk enough. We didn't look look disenfranchised enough.
Wow.
So we didn't get picked.
Wow.
And I started realizing a lot of the stuff that Rodney was doing for us was not because of me, but because
of course not.
Rodney has a thing for young, beautiful women. Not that he ever got them, which can be seen in the documentary.
Well, in the documentary, it made it seem like he was getting a lot of girls.
No, they would be around him.
Not by the 80s, but the 60s and all of that. Right.
Yeah, but he was already in his 50s by the time the 80s came around, or late 40s, and he was still hanging around with 18 to 25-year-olds, and they basically used him to get around the scene, but they wouldn't allow him to touch him.
It was I'm sure for Rodney, it was an addictive lifestyle.
Yeah, but it hurt
in all honesty. Anyone that put themselves in that, you go from the 60s, right, the height of the 60s, and he was there, and he just never stopped. Everyone else, society changed, but he didn't have to.
Yeah.
I mean, he was involved. He was like the interface between your normies and the hipsters the hipsters, right, that were the normies, and the people who were actually really popular.
And no matter what, he never changed his hair. He always had them up. always. But
to his credit, though, he didn't stay in that music. He actually pushed the envelope and actually helped popularize punk in new wave and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, he pushed the Ramones, he pushed Blondie, he pushed all kinds of stuff when people were trying to push the Bee Gees on us. God bless him.
Yeah. Awesome.
And now see, that's someone I really wanted to meet. I really wanted to meet Debbie Harry and her husband.
Oh God, I love her
because when
her work.
they jammed. I mean, it
Yeah.
really was fast, upbeat.
And that Best of Blondie, I would recommend that to anybody. That
Yeah.
Best of Blondie.
With that song Dreamin', that was beautiful.
Yeah, it's just beautiful, man.
Yep. And another band I wanted him to introduce me to was the Buzzcocks. I love the Buzzcocks.
Sure.
He wouldn't do it. And finally, when Kelly turned 18, she went off to college. She wanted to be in politics, right? So she went out of state, political science, all that stuff. And I didn't really talk too much with him anymore. That's when I started realizing, you know what? He wasn't really my friend. He was nice to me because of Kelly.
Yeah.
Because once Kelly was out of the scene, I didn't get to talk to him too much. Right. But his handlers, okay, whether you believe it or not, he had people that had to protect him because he was well known.
Yeah.
And these people were ex-gang members. Okay.
They were ex-gang members.
Yeah.
These guys protected Rodney.
Yeah.
And you would hang out with them. It started becoming when the girl was leaving, you were hanging out with them a little more than Rodney himself.
Yeah. And they told me that Rodney was like this. It's like, dude, you were around him because of the girl. And that's just who Rodney is, you know? Yeah. You gave him a little bit of hope, dude. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, well, look at you, bro. You know, they were straight up like me. They knew I was straight up. I could handle it. Yeah. Because I know I'm not a good looking guy. And they're like, you know, dude, you're just, you know, you're not the epitome, and neither was Rodney, and you had her, dude. Yeah. And even when you broke up, she was still faithful to you.
You know, they exploited in his documentary the fact that he was lonely at the end of later in his life. And but you reap what you sow. But they exploited all that anyway in the documentary, I think.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
Well, it was sad because me and Kelly were at that interview that's in the documentary where he's with that beautiful girl and they run up and ask him. But, you know.
He was saying he's in love with her or something like that. Remember, on his way there or something?
He loved her to death.
Yeah.
But he fell into love with people easily, with women. Okay. That was it. He had a type. He really did have a type.
Yeah.
But they came up and asked her, "Oh, are you his girlfriend?" And she just kind of looked around, being put on the spot, and was like, "No, we're good friends."
Documentary, yeah, for sure. And you were there in the room for that part.
Yeah, because we're not allowed. Whenever people want to interview Rodney, none of the hangers on, which they call now entourage. Okay, none of the entourage is allowed around. And that's where the handlers came in. They made sure we were out of view of the cameras. And me and Kelly weren't the only entourage. There were like 12, 14 of us that just grouped Rodney that he liked, that he wanted around him, you know?
Yeah.
And
I could see that for a young man going into even middle age, you get addicted to that lifestyle. You get addicted to the whole thing, you know? It's not, I wouldn't judge someone like that too harshly. Yeah.
It was crazy because... But like I said, I became friends with the two handlers. One was an ex-member of 18th Street. Another one was a Crip. And it was funny because the dude that was from the Crips had to join the military. He got busted doing some really bad stuff. He had to join the military. Did his stuff in the military and got out. He was an expert marksman, all this stuff. So yeah, that figures that he was allowed to be around, you know, Rodney. And then him and the guy from 18th Street, they were buddies beforehand. So he made sure that Rodney knew who he was and made him part of the, you know, I guess you call them bodyguards, unofficial bodyguards.
Right.
And I became really good friends with them. They were still able to get me tickets and all this stuff to go to gigs. And they helped me out of a really bad situation because when me and Kelly, before I got my scooter, I didn't tell this story, and this is a true story. And I can tell it because no one was harmed in the story.
Yeah, you have so many stories. Let's say this. You have so many stories that just you can't tell.
Yeah, there are many stories I can't say, but this one I can.
Okay.
There was a Filipino gang that for some reason wanted to get me ever since they saw that I was a punker. And they act
Oh,
like my neighborhood was their territory, right? And me
right.
living there was encroaching. I'm like, what do you mean? I've been here since I was 5, dude. This is my neighborhood.
Yeah.
I live here. These are
See,
my
being
neighbors.
a punk rocker, or even if you weren't with the Liberty Spikes at that time, anything off kilter, people would point to as an object of ridicule.
Oh yeah, and cops
It
went
wasn't cool, you
after us.
guys.
Yeah,
It wasn't
cops
cool.
harassed us like nothing.
Yeah.
Always thought we had drugs on us, all this stuff, illegal searches. But anyway, with this story, it's before I got my scooter. Me and Kelly she came to pick me up at my house. Her mom dropped her off there. She met my aunt and my mom, and we were walking to the bus stop on Western Avenue to go up to Hollywood Boulevard. And then we just walked from there. We were going to have early dinner and then go to the Florentine Gardens and meet her friends.
Yeah.
And somehow, while we're waiting at the bus stop, the Filipino gang, they called themselves Santanas, like Satan with an AS at the end, Santanas.
Okay.
And they saw us at the bus stop. They pulled up in whatever car they had. I don't think it was a Pinto, but it looked like a Pinto.
Uh-huh.
And 4 of them came out, started harassing me. They ripped the Wayfarers off my head. They started harassing her. I tried to fucking stop them. They pushed me down. They were fucking with her. I got up. One of them fucking punched me back down. Another one pushed her up against the wall.
Wow.
And I told Keith, almost said names, I told the handlers what they did. And he's like, I want you to do this. I want you to set up a meeting with this gang, and me and so are going to be there with you.
Wow.
And we're all going to be packing.
That's hardcore, dude.
And I'm like, what? No, this was a real name of a Filipino gang in LA. There were 2 of them. And it all started because one of them didn't like me when I was as a punker. Yeah. And he wanted to fight me one-on-one. But I just got into an accident. I was in a cast and on crutches,
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, what? You're going to beat up on a dude who can't stand without crutches?
Yeah.
You're a big man. And you let me get healed, we'll fight. Well, we did fight. And he took the first punch at me, going right for the face. I did this, came running in, and his neck hit here. I got him in a chokehold. There was a wall up this way, and he kind of bent backwards in an awkward angle. And I kept running, ran his head into the fucking wall, and then dropped him on the ground. And I said, dude, do you really want to keep doing this? Because my docs are steel-toed. I can kick you in the face a few times. Or are you done?
Yeah.
Because once you get in that mode, you don't care.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, he didn't take kindly to that, so he had to get his gang members to help out,
So that actually happened before what the story that you told just.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And so I let them know about this. So we made, and then where we were meeting, my friend Bong lived right across the street, and his brother Joey. They were well-to-do Filipinos, but they weren't part of the gang.
Right.
And my friend Bong had a crush on Kelly too, because it's, being a poor kid and his family owning a bunch of 7-Elevens throughout LA, he kind of flaunted that, But Kelly was the one thing I had he could never get. Never, ever get. And that pissed him off. And he's like, what are you doing? Because the 3 of us were sitting on a brick wall that is about this high. Thank you. In front of a big apartment complex. And the big Crip dude's right next to me. And the dude from 18th Street's right here. And Keith Keith pulls out a big automatic, and Keith was a big dude. He was about 6'3", 6'4", and about 210, 220.
Wow.
And he says, "This is mine." And then the other guy pulls out a revolver. I couldn't tell if it was a 38 it was a medium barrel. So it wasn't a Saturday Night Special.
Yeah.
I just know it was a revolver. And then the other guy, the ex-Crip again, handed me a smaller gun, and he said, "This is yours. This is what you do. We're waiting for them. They're going to come out. I know how these people are. They're going to come out in cars. If they have guns, we're ready. If they just come out with sticks, bats, chains, whatever, we're still ready. And this way we scare the fuck out of them, and they will never fuck with you or anyone associated with you again."
And those were Rodney's guys. These are the bodyguards of Rodney. Right?
Yeah. And they were legit. They had their CCWs, everything. So they could just say these guys attacked them while they were taking me home from hanging out with Rodney. They had it all planned out. And so the gang pulls up into cars. There were like 8 or 9 of them, right? And I'll call him K. K called it. They had sticks, bats, chains, knives. And he stood up. He said, "You better be ready, and don't be a pussy." That's what he said to me. Don't be a fucking pussy.
Yeah.
And I'm shitting bricks. I never handled a gun before. It's the first time I had a gun in my hand.
Wow. So you had with the revolver?
No, a smaller automatic than his, which I found out now they don't make anymore. It's what they called a 225.
Yeah.
Okay. And he said, "We're going to scare the fuck out of them. On the count of 3, we lift our guns, let them see them, aim above their heads, and fire."
Dang.
And because they were piling out of the cars with their little fucking like gang weapons and coming at us. So 1, 2, 3, boom, 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 boom.
Wow.
And dude,
it's scattered
like roaches.
Oh yeah, who would? Yeah.
And he was right. He started laughing. He started laughing.
Yeah.
He started laughing. And Ronald's like, "Dude, you're a dick." Oh, I said his name. Sorry. And
so you were in with those guys, but you later got in more trouble with those guys, right?
Yeah, where I had to leave the state, but that's another story.
Yeah.
Because the dude from 18th Street, they didn't like to associate with his brother because his brother was a known thief. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, he's aware of that. He said no one got hurt, and so this was.
Yeah, that's why we did.
And also, well, he, our friend Jeff here is a former police guy too, so he understands.
Yeah, and I mean, we're talking about 40 years ago.
40 years ago, and 40, no one got hurt.
42 years ago.
Yeah,
we didn't hit anybody. We didn't do anything. I got beat up a lot more than any damage I dished out. Okay.
Yeah, you were no gangbanger. You were just a punk rocker.
Yeah. And these guys were just there to back me up. And they did. They helped me out. Because of them, like when a lot of the FBI was closing down, a lot of the that's true. That's true. Well, good. I'm glad to hear that. That's awesome.
Excellent, dude. Glad you have that whole run, man.
We know this, but I was 17 at the time. I know that now. I mean, I'm a responsible adult now. Okay, I would never do that now. Yeah. I'm not like, but I didn't know it.
Moving on. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was a wild, crazy time in Los Angeles, dude. This was 40 years ago. Just keep that in mind, guys.
40 years ago, yeah.
Yeah, you can't compare.
Different world.
Then. Yeah, you can't compare back then to now. Okay. Right. But the FBI started closing down a lot of the phone rooms because 95% of them were scams being run by various mobs. I always wondered why I got paid in cash every week. And I ended up losing my job because I went to work one morning, and the FBI was putting chains on the door, and the people who ran it were coming out in handcuffs behind their backs. And it's like, who are you? What are you doing here?
What house was this?
For these people?
What house was this?
No, it wasn't a house. It was the job, the phone room I worked at.
Wow.
Yeah, because it was basically a scam. They were overcharging people for the ad specs. They weren't making the ad specs.
Hey, well, we're moving it along from that story, my friend. So thanks for asking. But,
yes,
you can rewind it, but we're not going to stay at that story.
Yeah, but that. Yeah,
thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.
I did mention them. They didn't like me because I was a punker. That's
all. That's the end of the story. Punk rocker.
Yeah, and it was kind of crazy. But
now, you were working somewhere now, right?
And yeah, remember I told you I worked at the phone room selling ad specs over the phone. Yeah. Well, it turned out to be a front committing mail fraud. Now, I didn't know this. It was the first job I ever had. But there were red flags. I should have known, but I'm a dumb kid. I don't know that you need to have an ID and a work permit.
It was your first job, right?
Yeah.
You were like having fun. You're like, wow, I'm going to get paid here.
Yeah. I didn't know about you're not supposed to get paid in cash every week in an envelope, a regular plain white envelope.
Yeah.
So they got busted by the FBI for mail fraud, and they thought they were asking, because a group of us were coming into work. They're like, "You guys work here?" And I was like, "No." Why did you know that group in Los Angeles? If that is quite interesting if you knew those guys. It is a small world. And yeah, they just didn't like me. I was a punker and they thought I was in their territory, but I grew up in that neighborhood, and that was it. But yeah, and so I had no money. I needed a place to stay because I couldn't pay my rent. And they were able to, it turned out Dave Mustaine and Dave Ellefson. I was 18 by this time. I was an adult, so I was cleaned up. I was listening to alternative music. Kelly was out of the picture. And I was trying to find another legitimate job. And it turned out, they were bad like that.
But so you lost your job, and
and I needed a place to stay. And now keep in mind, these guys, K and R, they handled Rodney. Rodney knew everybody, so they knew everybody. They knew the head sound producer at Mars Recording Studio. And it just happened that Dave Ellefson and Dave Mustaine were staying with them while they were producing their first EP, Killing Is My Business and Business Is Good. And they were using the money they made from doing gigs at the Troubadour and the Waters Club and all those places to keep paying for it, Yeah.
So this we're jumping up to like 85, 86, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Because I'm 18 now.
Yeah.
And they said, "Hey, I got a place you can live." And he had a nice house in Echo Park. It was on the hills of Echo Park, right above Dodger Stadium. So you could go out onto his balcony and actually see a Dodger game down below if you wanted to, And I'm like, dude, living here is great. Awesome. And he knew of a legit phone room because Dave and Dave, when they weren't doing gigs and practicing, were working at that place. And so they got me a job working in a phone room since I already had experience, and it was a legitimate job. And I was
now you're friends with Dave Mustaine.
Yeah. And I lived on a street called Hobart, right near Melrose and Western in Los Angeles. I grew up there from the age of 5 till about 18, 19.
So you were looking for a place to live too, or you just need you're just looking
I
for
needed a job and a place to stay. So they
Wow.
got me the job. I'd pay part of the rent. Dave was really cool with me. Okay, I can say I don't know anything bad about Dave. I don't. A lot of people talk a lot of shit about him. I have nothing but good things to say. And I'm not saying this because he literally saved me from getting raped. He was one of the I know that area. My friend Jay used to live there, and I used to walk. I used to walk to his house. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we were all in the same hood. All right. And
But you have nothing bad to say about Dave
yeah,
Mustaine.
he was intelligent. He was articulate. The man had mass knowledge on a cornucopia of talent and subjects, and he consistently practiced. If he wasn't at work or he wasn't doing a gig, the metronome was like this: doop 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 doop.
Yeah,
He's like,
at this time he was driven to succeed at all costs. I think, from
yeah,
what I understand, he also backed off on the drink. He wasn't as rowdy and crazy. He was still that way, but not nearly as much as when he was in Metallica in those days.
yeah, yeah. But he actually mellowed out,
And he
and
mellowed out. So you met him when he was kind of mellowing out, but he was still driven to
yeah,
succeed.
yeah. He still liked to party, but nothing like he did when he was in Metallica, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I was there when he was voted when Megadeth was voted most promising band of the year, and they got a big cash award. They finished the album. They used the rest of the money to go party up in Lake Arrowhead. They rented a cabin, and if I was wondering if the gig you played, what? Yes, yes, the Anti Club. Yes, yes, yes.
That's where all hell broke loose.
Girl, we're in the same hood. Yes, thank you. Yeah, right there on Melrose and Normandy. Yeah, right at the bottom of, because Normandy was like a big street, but it was a hill going up and then down. And then at the other end, the down part, that Melrose, it crossed Melrose. And right there on the corner was the Anti Club, man.
And that's where all hell broke loose in that earlier story you told.
And, you know, it's one thing like being at the Santa Monica Civic Auditorium in the crowd when the riot breaks out at a gig.
Yeah.
You know, I might have known you. I'm serious. I'm serious, Cleo. I might have known you. This is so awesome.
Yeah, internet it's wonderful, isn't it?
I've changed a lot since then. I am conservative. I am Christian.
Yeah, so all this was 40 years ago, you guys.
Yeah, I mean, I'm almost 60 this year, so I'm a totally different person.
You look great. You look great.
Well, thank you. I like to believe Jesus gave me back the years I squandered on heroin and all that other crap.
I know we skipped a lot of crazy stories.
Well, I gotta save stories. Okay, Rodney. Okay, I don't know if you guys knew this, but
Rodney Bingheimer. Here we go.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about Rodney. He knew all the bands before they got big.
Yeah. No, he helped make these bands that we all love now.
Like now, it is.
Who loves alternative rock? And all of that earlier punk, all the way to alternative rock of the 90s.
Same here. Same here.
You know?
Same here, Greta. I was too. And what ended up happening is, and I'm going to tell this story in the next episode, guys. I promise. Okay.
We're going to finish up. Well, the Dave Mustaine we got to get to, but we'll pause that one. Okay.
I got to share this. Everybody knows that before they made it big, Jane's Addiction, Fishbone, and Red Hot Chili Peppers all used to practice together. They were all friends, really good, really good. You know, I probably know Bishop. I bet you Bishop was one of the hangers on with us. You know, he was one of the neighbor guys. I met one guy, I didn't know his real name. We just called him Monster because he had all the crazy hair. He loved a lot of the same obscure stuff like Captain Beefheart that
See,
that
that's not so,
Rodney did.
yeah,
And he would play us. They would go back and forth over the more obscure Captain Beefheart albums they had, and
awesome.
who had the better live Alice Cooper album, whose was in better condition, and all
Yeah,
this stuff.
yeah.
It's crazy, but he took me to one of the houses that they practiced at, which was actually in my neighborhood. Now, my side, okay, Western was the main drag. Okay, Western Avenue went all the way down through Watts. It went into Long Beach. Okay, in San Pedro, it was a main drag, Western Avenue, and all
Yeah.
the way up into Hollywood and led right into the Griffith Park area up to the Griffith Observatory. But it went far down too. Um, my side was pretty residential and houses and stuff. Once you crossed the other side of Western, didn't matter what part you were on, it got kind of bad. There were abandoned houses. There was a lot of blight, rundown, rundown apartment buildings and stuff. One of the abandoned apartment buildings is where Perry Farrow and Janes and
Wow.
and Flea and Andy and the
All these,
Red Hots
yeah,
and Fishbone would practice for free. They and Rodney paid for the electricity to be on for them to practice because he knew they were going to be big, and he kept pushing them to get an album going. Because it's like, look, you cut an album, I'll get you airtime, you'll get groovy. DS, good to see you. And okay, everybody's tripping out. Yeah, it was a jam house. Jeff
and that
knew
was
about it,
nearby
but
where you lived.
huh? Yeah,
That was
I
nearby
didn't
where
even
you
realize it. It was like I could literally walk to that house if I wanted to. But if they didn't know you or you weren't with someone that was known, you weren't allowed. They had
lived.
people outside that kept you out.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
if you wouldn't leave once they asked you to leave nicely, it wouldn't be good.
Right. Right.
And it was crazy. I mean, I can say this about Perry Farrow. He is just, or back then, he was just as weird as you frickin' think he was.
Okay. All right.
He was, and it didn't help that he was on the stuff at that time too. But then everybody was on something back
Yeah.
then. It
Yeah.
didn't matter if they were snorting something. It didn't matter if they were shooting something. Everybody was on something.
Right. Right.
And Jeff knows about jam houses because I'm sure he busted quite a few of them in New York. They had them out here, you know, and that was one of my regrets. I never got to see the New York scene because I heard the New York scene was a lot better than our scene. It didn't have the anger and hatred. There was more unity for the different types of punks. And the punks, even though they had that look, they still had goals to better their lives, where the punk scene in LA started to become so filled with the hate and violence, which is so funny for me. It's kind of ironic that because I met this girl, Kelly, she kind of changed me from being that angry, hostile person to where I didn't want to be in that scene anymore. Much like how I used to love horror movies, but now I can't stand them, you know? It's so
Well,
fun.
it's interesting that you were there and you actually saw the morphing of the scene over the years, over like 3 or 4 years. It changed quickly suddenly.
Yeah.
That anger
And
became evil, as you said.
yeah, and there because a lot of the punks started forming gangs. Like one of them that I remember, one of the biggest gangs was Los Angeles Death Squad, or they called themselves the Lads.
Yeah.
And then another one was Venice White Boys. And punkers were always getting beat up by all kinds of gangs too. So they formed their own. Like Stoner's Trece was beating up on them, which was a bunch of stoners that formed a gang. Everybody beat up on everybody. That stuff you see in SLC punk, that was mid to late punk scene where it was just people fighting.
Like Romper Stomper in Australia or whatever
that. That's the beginning of the scene was nothing like that.
Yeah. So everything was new. Everything was like, even though your classmates despised how you looked, but because they were awkward, they felt awkward by it, and so they made fun of you. But it wasn't this all breaking out into the gang scene that it actually did, and the rioting started to be and all.
Yeah.
The whole vibe changed, and once you did that one gig, right, with
that was it,
Red Scare.
And that was
that's like a twist of fate, isn't it?
Yeah. That was the first time I wasn't part of the riot. I was going to be rioted on. And that's what I was saying earlier. It is totally different. Yeah, I never heard of HDP. I have to be honest. But by that time, I had moved on to the alternative and ska scene because of Kelly. And I won't say her last name. I'll just say Kelly, and just like I will never say K and R's name, I'll just use K and R. But I do have stories about R's brother, who was a thief, and I should have never met him. That's all I'll say. But those are stories for another time.
You want to complete the Dave Mustaine story, or do you want to save,
Oh yeah, no, I'll tell this. It's a true story. I told it on your show once before, and I will never say anything bad about Dave, and I love him with all my heart to this day. I was in the house. He went to go pick up some chick he was seeing. I think she was a maid. And either she worked for Bob Dylan or worked for someone famous, and he was going to go meet this person while he picked her up from work.
Yeah.
And there was a well-to-do neighbor next door, just happened to be gay, and had a younger boyfriend. And I didn't know they were into really degenerate stuff until later. Okay. But the younger guy comes over and says, "Hey, are the Daves here?" I'm like, "No." "How about Mars?" "No, just me. I just got home from work."
You were roommating with them at this time.
Yeah.
So you needed a place to stay, and they let you stay there. Is that what happened?
Yeah. And they got me a job at a legitimate phone room so I could help pay rent too.
So these are cool guys.
Yeah, they were awesome. They got me a job and they saved my life. Because
no, you're getting to the story where they saved your life, but they actually gave you a place to live before that.
Yeah, they gave me a place to live and gave me a job.
Wow.
Because they worked at the same phone room. Okay.
Yeah.
And I got stories about the guy who ran the phone room. Okay. Because this goes back to me being into the art scene at the time and trying to pencil and ink and do illustrations and stuff like that. And anyway, I'm digressing. So many stories. It's all just rushing through my head.
All right, we'll
after this. This is going to be the last story, and then we'll do a part 2, guys.
Okay, awesome.
And he comes next to me, and I was still wearing my spike bracelets, because that was just jewelry for punkers back then. Even though I was more of an alternative guy.
Right.
Okay. He's like, "What do you wear those for?" I'm like, "What do you mean? I like them. It's what I wear." I had a t-shirt, jeans. I had my creepers on because that's what I wore. I still have creepers to this day, by the way. I could go grab them out of the bedroom and show you guys. I still love my creepers.
Maybe next time, huh?
Yep. But he starts grabbing me by my arm.
This guy, okay, so this guy shows up at the place where you're staying. Dave Mustaine gave you a place to stay in a job. You're staying there. They're not there. Dave and Dave are both gone.
Yeah, and the guy who actually owned the house, which was the guy who ran the Mars recruiting studio. I didn't know his real name. We just called him Mars. You know?
And you didn't know really. You knew of this guy. You kind of knew him, but you didn't know like how much of a degenerate he was.
Yeah,
this guy who's about to assault you.
yeah, that's all we're gonna say is he tried to exually assault me, and I was able to kick him off of me, and I must have hit his nuts because he kind of grabbed him, and he's heading out the door, and he said, "You better not tell anybody." Fuck you! I'm telling everybody as soon as they get back. That's what I'm thinking in my head.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at it. And I'm kind of bruised up. I got marks on me from where he's grabbing me and trying to rip up my shit. And Dave and Dave come home. And they were with Mars. And they were actually at the studio. The girl flaked on them, so they went to record a track. And it was like maybe 45 minutes after that situation happened. And I'm like, Dave? And it was Ellefson. And this is why I can't believe Ellefson was accused of messing around with a minor on the internet. Because he was the one who sat down and said, Jim, what happened? And Dave Ellefson was so cool and calm and collected. And I'm still in shock.
Yeah.
But he made me feel at ease and chill, and I was able to tell him every little thing that happened. And he said, Dave, to Mustaine, because Mustaine was putting their guitars and stuff in their bedroom and all that, And he's like, you need to get out here. And he's like, what? What the fuck, man? Because he was always like that. He was intense. He's fuck, what? That was just Dave Mustaine. And Ellefson said, Jim, I want you to tell Dave exactly every detail you just told me. And I did. I told him about how the guy knocked on the door. I let him in. He asked for you guys. He asked for Mars. Nobody was here. I went back to sitting on the couch reading the book, listening to K-Rock. And like that song by Pixies, this is the only way I can make a joke out about it, but it is no joking matter, is buy me a Pepsi. Then he tried to molest me in the parking lot.
There were some, yeah.
And he sat there. They looked at each other, looked at me, looked at each other again.
After you told them, right?
Yeah. And he says, you sit right here on this couch. Don't move. We'll be right back. I'm like, Dave, don't do anything. It's like, shut up. We'll be right back.
Yeah.
About a half hour later, they come back in, knuckles all bloody and bruised. It's like,
wow.
You're not going to have that problem ever again, Jim. And when he can walk, he'll be over to apologize.
Wow.
And sure enough, 4 days later, he came over. This eye socket was all black, still swollen. His mouth was sticking out on the other side, all swollen and fucked up. And I'm sorry, I'm so wrong. I'm like, whatever, dude. I don't ever want to be around you again.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
wow.
I love them to death. The only other.
You love Dave. You couldn't believe they did that for you.
Yeah.
Right?
The only other being who would do something like that for anyone is Jesus Christ. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
But these guys are regular Joes, and they did that for me.
Yeah.
And they still asked about me even after, like, once they found out I got married, they were like, through R&K, because they knew I kept in touch with R&K.
Yeah.
How is Jim? How's he doing? Is he getting along with his wife? Everything okay?
Yeah.
And tell him to email us, and we'll send him backstage passes anytime we're in town. He can come see us, hang out, blah, blah, blah. Dude, that was the coolest thing.
Sure.
Like, Dave gets the worst rap ever in the music industry because of his Metallica days or being so opinionated. But the man was an incredibly intelligent and down for his friends.
Yeah. Yeah. He's a standing dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm going to end it on that, because talking about that story still, even though I gave it to God, it still fucks with me.
Sure. Yeah. You can't believe when someone is doing that. It's just, and it's seemingly out of the blue. and
Yeah.
then you're trying to reconcile what happened afterwards. That must have been devastating, dude.
Missing Mars, the only money you owe me is $20 to ship. I am not selling comics anymore. I'm giving comics away. So you don't pay for your comics, Missing Mars. You just send me $20 and I ship them out to you. Okay.
I want to thank everyone for joining Jim and I. We're going to do this again. It's not Gemini. It's Jim and I.
There is going to be a part 2 because I still have to talk about Perry Farrell, Red Hot Chili Peppers. I have to talk about. I got to talk about Fishbone, and Fishbone was so fun. They were clean. Okay, Fishbone was a really clean band. Okay,
that's really good.
Yeah, he was. No, they screwed him over. They screwed Dave over. They did. They screwed Dave over. Plain and simple. I'll never love Metallica. And they stole the first 8 songs that he wrote for him on their 2 EPs. And that's why he had to sue them and get his money and rights for those songs. Yeah. 4 Horsemen, Ride the Lightning, all that. Creeping Doom.
Creeping Death. Yeah.
Creeping Death. Yeah. Sorry, I got H.P. Lovecraft there for a second. But yeah, I love Dave. And yeah, you're right. When you talk about the trauma, you kind of relive it. And it's, even though it's 40 years in my past, it is still traumatizing.
Yeah.
I didn't care that the Filipino gang was after me. I only cared because of what they did to Kelly.
Sure.
Kelly was my lifeline. Kelly made me a better person. You know, just like my wife. God sent my wife, no matter how crazy she drives me sometimes, and God sent my son to make me a better man.
That's beautiful, man.
You know, and I only hope I can live up to half of the man I'm supposed to be and still follow.
You're doing great. You're doing awesome, man.
You know,
and we'll get into that.
And
you know,
but
you're doing just fine.
Even though there was so much bad in that. Oh, and I didn't tell you guys about the time I ran away with a 25-year-old punk rocker, and I was only 16. 25-year-old punk rock chick.
We're going to do part 2. I'm going to rename this part 1, you guys, and then we're going to do part 2. You know?
You're going to love it. You're going to love these stories. They're crazy. Dude, cool. I wish you would only just do the 20. I'm not going to. Dude, I am giving it away. Like Andy says, give it away now.
So Greta says, has been talking to you. She says, you know, I've been there too, you know.
Yeah. And
and she feels the same way.
Yeah. Best thing I could have ever done, Greta, is get the hell out of Los Angeles. Best thing I ever did. I live out near Palm Springs. Okay, I'm about 45 minutes from Palm Springs. And other than there being an influx of homeless because they're paying bus tickets from LA to ship them out to my town, it's pretty decent out here. I only had one bad encounter, which I talked about in a video. Aaron knows it. I'm not going to bring it up or talk about it again. That's a very hard thing. And that's when I discovered Jesus Christ, because after that incident, I shouldn't be here. Only by the grace of the Lord Jesus Christ am I still alive, and I became a firm believer. I was almost like an old school rabbinic Jew. I believed old school God, right? Yeah. Jehovah. And I believed the law of Moses, but I had a problem with the New Testament. And no, after what I went through, Jesus saved me. Jesus. And I learned no more eye for an eye. Love thy neighbor as you love thyself.
Yeah, that's the important
stuff. 7 times 70 times 70, you know. And
that's the important stuff.
Yeah. Because he changed it all. He put it upside down. Yeah. Jesus was awesome, man. I love him.
Yeah.
And he even went after all those rabbinic Jews and told them, yeah, you know the letter of the law, but you don't get the spirit of it, man.
Yeah. And also our friend Kat with a K is here. Lady Braven, thank you so much. Thank you
I
if you
do.
guys rewatch this too. We're gonna close this up. Greta, thank you. That was awesome. You connected with Jim and Damien. Thank you everyone for being here. I am going next week though. Next week I'm doing a listening party. It's going to either be a Friday or Saturday. I haven't decided what.
It's going to be awesome, guys.
It's going to be great. And before we leave, I'm gonna share this with you guys here.
Oh, I just want to say, if I may, Aaron, and it's, people may think I'm biased because you are my good friend, but his music is awesome. And I only heard one track that he used as an opening for one of his videos. If you like Dream Academy, if you like early Joy Division, if you liked experimental Brian Eno stuff,
Thanks, man.
You're going to love Aaron's stuff. That's
Awesome.
all I'm going to say.
Love you, Jim. So, I'm just a dork with a laptop, you guys. And, but I've been working on this universe because David Lynch told his fans to create your own world. So every song ties into to each other. And it starts down here. And I'm going to redo a lot of what I started years ago because I know what I'm doing a little bit better, I think, than then. So, but now what I'm going to drop next week is called Discarded Time Path Obsolete Report. And right now, you can go to any one of these songs and I tell you what instruments I used. And I'm a big fan of Brian Funk and Ableton. I also, each song ties into the other song. So this song's about Ripley Cates, in other words, and you could click on this and you can go to the one that was before the story, or you can go all the way to the start of the story, which is down here. So it's a big undertaking. I'm kind of crazy for doing this, but I blame Bob Pollard, Guided by Voices, and I blame David Lynch as well. I'm going to redo a lot of these and get them ready for streaming, and so that's next week. So if you guys want to join me for that, it's going to be fun. Listening party. I'm going to simulcast. I'm going to do the Facebook thing. I'm going to do the YouTube thing. I'm going to do the Bandcamp thing, and I'm going to hold up, visual stuff and act like a dork. And I really hope you guys show up for that.
And I was just going to say, if I may, thank you, Greta. I'm glad you like me. I'm just so happy to meet someone else from the old stomping grounds who actually got out of the scene as well and survived. Okay. So yes, praise Jesus for you as well. May he bless you and keep you protected. Missing Mars, dude. Oh, and I just want to say thank you to Aaron, not because he lets me get on here and talk to me, but Aaron is a true friend. I mean, he has my phone number. I don't talk to people on the phone.
We're all like loners. That's what I'm finding out with this whole YouTube journey is that, I never expected that it turned out to be what it is. A lot of us are just loners and we have a lot in common with each other. And now we're actually like pals and stuff.
Yeah. And
it's truly amazing.
Yeah. And, my wife and I are looking at, thanks to her dad, 2 houses up in Twin Falls, Idaho, which is right by Tat's neck of the woods, Oregon, and not too far from my main man, Eric.
Yeah, you're one of my main men for sure, Jim. I love you.
So, I mean, I'd be able to drive and see 2 people I love to death. And I don't mean in some weird depraved way like that guy tried to do to me. I mean in friendship,
Yeah.
Because if it wasn't for Aaron, I wouldn't have learned about, same here, other than married loner.
That's a lot of us. A lot of us. Yeah.
90% of the time, Greta, I have a job that allows me to work from home because I can do everything on the computer. And even when I do meetings, I do a Google Meet meeting. And I look nice in a shirt and tie, but I'm in my shorts underneath like I am now because they only see you from up here.
And this is why I want to interview a lot of friends, just and have it be about 20th century music and how it shaped you when you were younger. I think everyone's important, even if you never played an instrument or went to a lot of shows. For me, I did both, but I didn't do it a lot, but I did both. and I also was in bands and stuff, but I was mostly a loner listening to music on my own. And I want to share that. I want to hear other people's stories and stuff like that. So this is really something, man. Really something.
We unite through our aloneness, but Aaron made me realize the joy of just reading and collecting comic books, because before, about 3 years ago, I had a different name online, and I was a big seller. You know, I would buy and sell and buy and resell and slab to make more money, and I hated it. Yeah. And I started, you know, Aaron showed me, hey, you can just sell books, but at $2-3 each. Keep what you love. What do you really love? You got to think about that. And that's another thing. Aaron always made me ask questions that made me ask myself, Jim, what the fuck are you doing? What do you really fucking
now look?
Why are you back in?
And Jim has been,
and I loved that.
He knows the golden. He knows all the vigilantes from the golden era. He loves the obscure indies from the 80s. So it's like, you guys, this is really awesome stuff, man. You know, I love your videos, Jim. And
thank you.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite indies from the 80s is Baker Street, because
I have some of the Baker Street from my friend Dave.
All the good stuff that happens in this, the good stuff, like Honor Among Punks and all that, that's what the punk scene started out as. It did have honor, you know? No.
We're gonna let you guys go. We're nearing the 2-hour mark. I like to keep it under 2 hours. Thank you so much, Greta. Thank you, Tat. Thank you, everyone, man, for being here. Thank you, Tat. I'm gonna interview Tat as well.
That's gonna be awesome.
To interview, man. Friends to interview.
God bless.
Deuces, everyone.
Love you all,
man. Hope to see you next week at my listening party. Later.